much. All right. All right. Today, you guys, I would like to introduce Ryan Martin, who began his career with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service in October of 2006, serving as a county extension agent in Motley, Childress, and Hall counties. In 2003, he was appointed as a disaster assessment and recovery specialist for District 1 in Texas. He's a native of Matador, Texas, and now he resides in Turkey, Texas, with his wife and two sons. He has a Bachelor of Science in Ag Services and Development from Tarleton State University and a Master's of Science in Ag Science from Texas A&M at Kingsville. Over the course of his career, Ryan has successfully planned, coordinated, and implemented a wide range of educational programs focused on 4-H and youth development, livestock, cotton, small grains, rangeland management, wildlife, and horticulture. I want to thank Monty for the referral for this presentation and thank Ryan for being on. We've been looking for something like this. He is going to give us a presentation on Texas Panhandle wildfire response and mitigation. We had something similar before, but it didn't really get into the nuts and bolts of what happens kind of once a wildfire happens. So Ryan, welcome and thank you so much for being here.
Yes, ma'am. Thank y'all. I guess you can hear me just fine?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. So I will start sharing my screen. Everybody see that fine?
Yep.
Okay. Like I told Vicky and Monty, this is only the second time I've done this via technology. So if something goes wrong, please bear with me. I do apologize. Like Vicky said, my name's Ryan Martin. I'm the Disaster Assessment and Recovery Specialist of Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. I cover Disaster District 1, which is the top 26 counties in the Texas Panhandle. So Dr. Dozier had asked me to talk about our 2024 wildfires, our response and recovery efforts. He also said I had about an hour, but I guarantee you I won't take that long, I promise. Oh, we're not advancing now. Oh,
There you go.
there we go. Perfect. Okay. So I don't know where everybody else is, your locations, but in the Panhandle, we have Southern Plains wildfire outbreak days. They happen every year. They're characterized by high temperatures, high winds, and low relative humidity levels. So February the 26th, that week, we had been warned that we were going to have one of these SPWO days, weeks. On the right there, that's a snapshot of our West Texas mesonet sites showing. Can y'all see my pointer, my mouse?
Yeah, we can see that.
Okay, perfect. So this shows the wind gust, and you can tell we were looking at the high 50s, low 60s winds. One thing I will make note of, these are all located in the southern plains because the electricity was off for the mesonet sites in the Panhandle. So like I said, this was in the southern plains, but you could tell we had one of those SPWO days. So on February 26th and 27th, we actually had 10 wildfires break out in the Panhandle. The 687 Reamer fire was actually got included into the Smokehouse Creek fire, which is the one that everybody knows about, got all the attention. The reason that one was allowed to burn into the Smokehouse Creek fire was resources were limited. There weren't any structures endangered, so they allowed it to burn into the Smokehouse fire. These are some GOES 16 satellite imageries that I took the night of February 26th, 27th. Kind of shows you just where those fires were located, how they burned together. You can actually even see some fires up into the Oklahoma Panhandle up there. So it just kind of shows what kind of devastation and what we were facing. During this time, I was in contact with the county extension agents in those counties. We knew that we knew what was happening and we knew what was fixing to happen. We were going to have to set up animal supply points in those areas just because of the magnitude of these fires. But we also held off because those were still active fires. And another reason we held off, the SPWO days, what normally happens in the Panhandle is we have west southwest winds, hot and dry, fires start, and then you get a northern that pushes through. And this satellite loop shows it. You can see the fires burning right there. The northern blows through and pushes the fire south. Where we were setting up these animal supply points were located on the south side of these fires because that's where the towns were. The Canadian River Basin just sits north of Pampa, all the way across to Canadian. So we held off on setting up the supply points because we didn't want to cause another issue, bringing donations in, trying to get donations out. So like I said, we just paused on that for a minute. Uh, the pictures on the right, excuse me, that is south of Canadian looking into the fire. I don't know if y'all can see the little the dinosaur sitting up on top of the ridge. That is just right outside of Canadian. And Canadian was one of those towns that was hit pretty hard. These are some pictures of the destruction, the devastation caused by the fires. You can tell not only did the firefighters have issues with high winds pushing these fires, but the terrain. You're looking at deep gullies, washes, sand. You know, those big, large trucks, they can't just push through sand like a little lightweight pickup. So the terrain caused a lot of issues, hindered firefighting efforts. The picture on the top right, I don't know, I'm sure everybody's seen it at some point in time, but this is Texas A&M Forest Service outline of the fires. To give you an idea, this Highway 287 north of Amarillo, from here to the Oklahoma state line, is about 110 miles. So those fires stretched, 110 miles easily. And then two, you can see we had that west southwest wind and then that northern hit and it started fingering that fire south. And like I said, we were setting up animal supply points at Pampa and Borger. Canadian was right in the middle of that fire, so that's why we held off on setting up those supply points just yet. These are just some more pictures of the devastation caused by the wildfires. Shows you the terrain. Yeah, it was not a good time in the Panhandle. So, like I said, once the fires were controlled and out for the most point, we set up animal supply points in Amarillo, Borger, Pampa, Miami, Canadian, and Wheeler. Make note that Amarillo and Wheeler, those supply points lasted about 3 to 4 weeks just because the need wasn't there compared to the other locations. And then two, we were able to get donations to those producers out of those other supply points. Uh, at Borger, I don't know how other states do it, but we have animal issue plans that will identify locations to set up supply points, volunteers to help. Well, there was a new young county agent in Borger, and I don't think she'd been on the job for a month, but She set up a supply point, and needless to say, we had to move it because of some issues. We moved to a smaller facility, so we had to work with Sanford Ranch out there to assist us in holding some of the supplies. They tended to the large round bales of hay and square bales, and they were great to work with. They knew producers around there and knew who needed what. Uh, and then in Pampa, there's several wildlife ranches that sell hunts and things like that. So we were getting a lot of wildlife donations. So we teamed up with the Mesa Vista Ranch out there. That family was great. They knew those people that needed the wildlife supplies, and they documented everything and worked great with us. But at one thing I will make note in when you're setting up an animal supply point, you always need to have an end date. So when we set these up, we met with the county judge and the MCs and all that, and we had a end target date of June the 1st to get everything off the premises and out to those producers. So those border Pampa, Miami, Canadian actually had a humanitarian supply point. Border did too, but we didn't deal with borders. Canadians was at the extension office, so we assisted there also. But like I said, those supply points lasted till June 1 for sure. So these are just some pictures from the supply points. I will tell you, I have been involved in several animal supply points throughout the years and humanitarian supply points. This was a very humbling experience. The effort and response was overwhelming, not only from Texas, but from across the U.S. People from Kansas, we met people from the Dakotas. I mean, it was overwhelming, a very humbling experience. So when we got these supply points up and going, of course, the donations rolled in very quickly. One thing through past experience I've learned is those clientele, those producers that need the supplies the most are probably not going to come in and get them. And that's what happened here. The the there were several reasons they didn't come in. Their tractor burned up, or their trailer burned up, or their hay barn burned up. They couldn't get to town. They were still assessing their damages and working on that. So we put out a call for hotshot drivers to help with moving these supplies out to those individuals that needed it. And this young man and his son were one of the hotshot drivers that came in. Uh, the picture on the top right, that elderly gentleman, he was consistent. Every morning he was there and he would load up and take loads out. One thing I told those drivers when they came in is we worked with our county extension agents, identified ranches that needed supplies, and we would load up supplies. But I told those drivers, when you get there to that drop point, those producers are going to tell you, I don't need it. So and so down the road is hit worse than I am. They need it. Make note of who they're telling you. You drop your supplies off right there, you come back and we'll load you up, and that's your next drop point. And we did that for weeks. And I can tell you that worked the absolute best because those producers were not able to get to us for whatever reason. So once we finally got the supply points closed and cleaned up, we had a meeting in the summer. And Dr. Parr Rosin, who's the head of Extension Rangeland Department here at Texas A&M, he asked, can we prevent or stop all wildfires from occurring? And I told him right off the bat, the answer is no, we cannot. So he rephrased that. Can we prevent some wildfires from occurring? Yes, absolutely. This goes back to, I say, third grade chemistry. We all know it takes four things for a fire to start: chemical reaction, oxygen, heat, and fuel. Three things for a fire to continue: oxygen, heat, and fuel. We are not God. We cannot control oxygen and heat. However, we can reduce or remove the chemical reaction that starts fires or the fuels. So I worked with Dr. Morgan Treadwell, Dr. Par Rosin, and we sat down and came up with some techniques. And they're not new techniques, but techniques to present to producers, landowners, whoever. And when we were coming up with these techniques, the first thing we noticed was that the majority of wildfires are from human ignition sources. In the U.S., 84% of wildfires are caused by human sources. In Texas, that number is closer to 90. Goes back to the Texas, we always got to be bigger, better in everything, including fires. So I will tell you, one of my pet peeves is this picture right there at the bottom, the chains on the trailers, and I've got a example of that later. I'll show you, but that right there, I've seen more fires caused by dragging chains on the highways. So when we started identifying techniques to take to landowners and producers, we started working with municipalities, counties, and other state partners to put in some of these mitigation efforts. The bottom right picture, that is one that I'm highly proud of. I got a phone call from the emergency management coordinator in Border, Hutchinson County. He said, we're wanting to burn off the right of way. This is Highway 207 south of Border. He said, we're wanting to burn off the right of way. And I need you to come up and visit with TxDOT in the county and just kind of make them relieved about what we're fixing to do, show them the pros and cons, and see if we can't get this done. So I told him, I said, yeah, I sure will. And he said, well, come up with a little one-page resource and send it to me, and I'll share it with them. And that way they can study it and have questions or whatever when you come present. So I worked with Dr. Treadwell. We came up with a resource, submitted it to him. A couple of days went by, I never heard back. Well, I called him and I said, hey, you still want me to come up and meet and present? He said, oh, no, they're good with it. They said we can burn it off, no problem. They burnt 14 miles of right of way south of Border. And not only did they get to burn the right of way, the landowner on the other side of the fence also allowed them to burn right inside the fence. So this is a 40-foot wide strip, 14-mile long, prescribed burn that happened in early spring of 25. This picture was taken early summer. They had a little bit of rainfall, but it shows, and I have another picture of why we did this, and I'll get into that here shortly. So some of the techniques we took out to producers, number one was reducing fuel loads, whether it be through prescribed burns, mowing, shredding, grazing practices, or cultivating bare ground. Uh, I will tell you, we've been working with the producer in Canadian who is doing intense grazing on the southwest side and west side of Canadian. That way, it goes to the saying down there, you can fight fire in short grass. So he's doing intensified grazing on those acres to try to keep that grass short. So if a fire ever does happen again, we've been working with some other areas on prescribed burns. Not everybody is for prescribed burn. My opinion is there's a place and time for it. You just there's a lot of planning and effort that has to go into it prior to it ever happening. But one of the things that we've been pushing the most is fire breaks up there. When you have hundreds of thousands of acres that there's absolutely no breaks in it, excuse me, then that fire is allowed to run and continue. So let's look at putting in some fire breaks. And like I said, none of these are new techniques. They've been used throughout the years. In fact, in 2011, I was a county agent in Motley County, and we had the first large wildfire of the season, burned over 35,000 acres. After that, we worked with landowners. That fire had started from a roadside ignition. So we worked with landowners next to those major highways. We worked with the USDA, NRCS, some other state partners to put in some fire breaks, some man-made fire breaks. The picture on the bottom left is a green zone that we had implemented. You can tell that that was a fire we had. That was probably about 2015. Fire burned right up to the green zone and pretty much put itself out. So green zones are something that I am very much for, whether it be wheat, rye, whatever. Not only does it help prevent or slow down wildfires, but it also helps your livestock and your wildlife through those winter months. Some other things that we've been doing, working with the Texas Forest Service to identify and map natural fire breaks, whether it be washes, gullies, whatever, or even just small waterways. They're working on mapping those out, talking to the producers about those natural fire breaks and how we can use them. Like I said, there's a lot of people that don't like prescribed burns or back burning on a fire, but if we can find those natural breaks and back burn off of them, that helps slow down or stop a wildfire, and we can control that much better. So I told you Borger burned off the highway south of there. Highway 207 burned off 14 miles. These are pictures. This is Borger Skycam. The top left one is looking west out of Borger. This is the Smokehouse Creek fire that burned up to Borger. If you'll notice, right along that fire, it stopped. And the reason was they went in early fall, late summer, early fall, and put in a fire break. They prescribed burned off, and this is the 4/6 ranch. They allowed them to burn that off, burn like 40 foot off right there next to Borger. The bottom right, this is a picture. They call this Industrial Boulevard. This is looking south. You can tell in that prescribed burn, they had a little bit of flop over that got into the Industrial Boulevard. The reason was that was a waterway that didn't burn out very well. There was one right there at the bottom and then one on up about the middle of the picture. And it did get into Industrial Boulevard, like I said, but they were able to get in there and get that put out. The highway they burned off, it runs right along top of this bottom right picture, just right on the outside. So they burned that highway off and they burned this off again. I can tell you if they hadn't have done that, that was the only thing that prevented Border from burning up. Is I'll say that. So that's why we pushed to burn that highway off. So this is a fire that we had in 2019, and I always like to use this when I'm presenting to show producers. This shows several different mitigation efforts that actually work. So, like I said, this was in 2019. This started from a elderly gentleman. He was dragging a trailer that had a side by side on it, and the chains that were attached from the trailer to the pickup were sparking down the highway. I was about 4 miles behind him. I got there, there were seven bar ditch fires, and yeah, the winds were rolling anywhere from 25, 30 miles an hour. The picture on the left, you can see there's a wheat field that we would consider a green zone that fire ran into and it put itself out. Picture on the right, there's a county road that outlined that fire, and we had a little bit of flop over, but this field on the bottom right is a cultivated field, plowed ground. The field on the top right is a newly emerged wheat field. So it was green, it had been plowed, it was coming up some. And then right along the edge, there's a waterway, a natural fire break. It had a little bit of flop over because of tall grass that hadn't been tended to. But you can see how all of those techniques go into effect and play a factor in preventing a wildfire from spreading. So I always like to use this and show producers that, yeah, this does work. uh, on this fire, let's see. Yeah, here it is. The left picture down here on the bottom left. If this hadn't have stopped, it was fixing to reach. This is the Prairie Dog Fork of the Red River. There is mesquite, there's juniper trees, there's salt cedar all in there. And I don't know if y'all deal with juniper, but juniper is like a gallon of gas. And when it's hot and dry, it's like 10 gallons of gas. So if this fire hadn't have stopped, we would have been, it would have been long gone if it had reached there. So like I said, we deal with a lot of brush in our area. So brush management was another issue that we identified in the meeting. Again, nothing new, but it needed to be readdressed. What we're seeing a lot of around here is we get out of county landowners who purchase land for recreational use, being hunting or whatever, and they don't manage it. It gets grown up with juniper and mesquite, whatever, and those cause issues and hinder firefighting capabilities. So this was something that we felt a need to get out to landowners, producers, clientele. So when we started talking about brush management, we identified three areas that were tried and true. Uh, Obviously, prescribed burn, patch burning, grubbing, and even chemical. Uh, Again, these are not new methods, but we felt it's just something that need to be readdressed and presented to these new landowners, basically. So prescribed burn, if you've ever been around Dr. Morgan Treadwell, she loves prescribed burn. I, on the other hand, believe there is a time and place for it. So it's not my number one go-to. Uh, the the areas that we have around here, a lot of them will have draws, gullies, and they get covered in juniper. You can't get anything in there. So a prescribed burn, a patch burn works great for those areas. However, it's like I said before, it takes a lot of planning and a lot of prep to implement a prescribed burn. The timing has to be perfect. And if all of those aspects come together, then it is a perfect way to control and reduce some fuel loads. However, it is not a one and done solution. The JA Ranch up here in the Panhandle, even the Matador Wildlife Management Area, they do a lot of prescribed burns. They rotate it around. A pasture will get burnt maybe once every 3, 4 years, and they just rotate it around. So these are some pictures of some prescribed burns that we've done so far. I showed this one. This is a before and after. In the picture on the left, you don't see the cactus, but we know they're out there. The picture on the right after we did the prescribed burn just shows how much cactus was out there. We got a good control on it. It took down a bunch of the mesquite trees that had died because the guy used a chemical and killed them. So it worked well to control and remove a lot of those fuels. Again, I talked about juniper trees. This shows just how well you can control junipers with prescribed burns. However, the timing's got to be perfect. You can see some of those junipers didn't torch out as well as others. So they weren't as dry. So like I said, the timing's got to be perfect if you're going to use a prescribed burn, patch burn. Shin oak, we've got a lot of that around here. I will tell you the lesson we learned on prescribed burn on shin oak is you better have a plan after you burn it off if that's going to be your technique. Because if you don't have a plan afterwards, you can burn 20 acres of shin oak off, and when it comes back, you're going to have 30 or 40 acres of shin oak. So if you're going to do a prescribed burn on shin oak, you've got to have another technique to follow, whether it be planting grasses or putting out pre-emergent or something. But if you don't, just know, yeah, you're going to have more after than you did before. So grubbing and mechanical removal. I worked with a lady. She had a ranch next to a major highway. She would always have wildfires, and they would burn several acres of her ranch. They were always roadside ignition sources, but she didn't want to prescribe burn. She wanted to do mechanical control. So this is an aerial shot of one of her pastures. On this pasture, she removed the brush from any gullies or washes or draws because she was trying to get the lake to fill up. Her little lake had gone down considerably, so she was trying to get water back into it. I will tell you, it worked very well. The only issue she had was obviously she removed all that brush from those draws, so erosion was the issue she had there. On the other hand, next to the highway, she removed the brush from the tops of the ridges and left the brush in those washes, gullies, and canyons. The reason for it, this is the highway, Highway 62. That's where all of her ignition sources were coming off of. So she cleared the brush. She also did intense grazing. You can somewhat tell this is the entrance to her ranch. She put in a fence line that parallels that highway and did intensify and grazing right there to keep those fuel levels low. I will tell you, she did see a decrease in the acres burnt from fires, not in the number of fires. She still had those ignitions off the highway, but they were able to get in there and control those fires much quicker. Again, back to you can fight fire in short grasses. The chemical control was our last technique that we identified. Two issues with chemical control. Number one, it leaves that dry, woody vegetation. And then if you're not managing your grasses, your grass fuel loads increase. So just know if you're spraying chemical, killing mosquito or whatever, you better have a management plan for those fuel loads that are below that. So what we've been telling producers is these are some techniques, some options, and we'll go out and help identify what works where. But every piece of property is different. So what works on your property is going to be different than what works on your neighbor's property, or what you're managing for is going to be different from your neighbor. So it's always what works on your property. Uh, Along with meeting, working with clientele, we've also developed a publication. This is the website you can go to, or you can do a Google search, AgriLife Extension Wildfire publication. Just know this is a 24-page publication. So if you're going to print it off, make sure you're got plenty of ink and paper in your printer. But it is an excellent uh, uh, publication. Uh, it was a large collaborative effort to put that together. We've also been working on some single 1-2 page publications to get out. Like I said, we have out of county landowners that we're trying to reach. So we are developing publications that we can put on social media, email list, whatever, to get that information out to them. This is one that we did back in late winter, early spring. We're also working on one right now that I hope comes out in the next week. It's talking about how to prepare right now for what's coming in the winter, late winter. Another thing, and I don't have a picture of it. I'm hoping Dr. Dozier buys it for us. I know Texas Forestry Service bought one, and I saw it here a while back. It is a tabletop simulator of wildfires. It's got a camera that shows terrain. You can pull up any piece of property anywhere in the U.S., uh, project it on that tabletop, move this sand product around and develop the terrain, and then you play a wildfire, you put your humidity in, your winds, directions, and all that, and it'll play how that wildfire will play out across that property. So I only think it's, I don't know, $5,000-6,000, Dr. Dozier. So, but other than that, that's what we've been doing. That's what we've been working on. I we're hoping that a lot of these techniques will help. We shall see because, like I said, I know we'll have another SWPO late winter, early spring. So we can only hope. And with that, that's all I have. If anybody has any questions.
That was outstanding. I right off the bat have a couple. Just because we just had a 65,000 acre fire in South Dakota, but we put juniper trees in as tree rows, so we intentionally plant them. But okay, so this is kind of a two-part question. So how often do the preventative techniques need to be done? Like, is that every year? Because it seems like it's such an extensive practice. And the second part of that, does USDA, Forest Service have any programs to offset the cost for landowners to do the preventative measures?
Uh, yes and yes here. So yes, these techniques, they are not a one shot and done, especially like prescribed burns. The If you're cultivating bare ground, you might could get by with once a year, but they're going to have to be repeated. The USDA, I don't know. I'm sure U.S. Forest Service, but I know Texas Forest Service have grants, assistance available to apply for. Uh, so that's something that you'd have to get with your local rep from those organizations and visit with them. I know South Texas, they just had a multi-county grant that they got implemented down there. So USDA and RCS, I said we worked with them on implementing some green zones. So there's those resources are there. Like I said, I know in Texas they are. That's something you'd have to look in your state for.
Nice. Okay, that's what I was thinking. Okay, any other questions for Ryan? Again, his presentation will be up on the website as well as the recording. If you have anyone that would be interested in this, it seems like we get the majority. Ryan, we have over 180 people on our distribution list, and so we have so many with conflicts. So we oftentimes get the majority of our working group watching the recording. So we appreciate that and your willingness for us to share your slides on our website as well. I did see, I don't know if you saw in the chat, but Rebecca Hager, she is extension up in North Dakota now, but her family was down there during those fires, or is down there, right, Rebecca?
Yes, they were part of the between Borger and Amarillo and Fritch, and they actually were devastated and had some of those relief supplies given to them. It was wonderful for their horses and chickens.
Yeah. And I know like the Dakotas sent a ton of hay down there.
Yes.
Just and you know, it's funny how Mother Nature works, but we had a great hay year that year. So it was just like the perfect timing for the Dakotas to be able to help. So excellent. All right. I know we are afternoon. So if anyone has any other or time slot, sorry, I'm in Mountain Standard Time. If anyone has any other questions or follow-up questions for Ryan, please feel free to reach out to me. I do think his email was in his first slide, and so you could also email him directly. Ryan, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This has just been outstanding. Again, Monty, Dr. Dozier, thank you so much for the referral. I want to remind everyone that we'll have Native Ecology with Kaya Deerenwater September 16th, and then October 21st, we will be doing the Ag Risk Viewer from the Southwest Climate Hub. And then hopefully, I haven't told him yet, but in November, we'll look at our weather outlook with Kyle out of the University of Montana. So thank you all for joining us so much. And everyone have a great rest of your day and rest of your week. We'll see you next month.